Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hi everyone, so today I'm going to be doing just a nice relaxing paint with me, and I'm going to be painting these cute little mini landscape paintings on these mini canvases that I have. I found these mini canvases at Michael's over the last winter, and I painted my first little acrylic paintings on them, and I just really enjoyed it. So I kind of wanted to spend this video doing a couple more little landscape paintings. So I'm gonna get out my paint brushes, and to do this I'm just getting out my Artist Loft mixed media brushes. These are just some ones I got from Michael's, and they work really well for acrylic painting. And I also am going to try out these Royal and Langnickel flat brushes, and I'm going to attempt using these palette knives. I don't know how they're going to work, and I'm just getting out my paint palette and my Liquitex Basics paint set. And these I got along with the mini canvases over the winter, and I just fell in love with them. They have so many different colors. But yeah, that's pretty much it for these supplies. And so I'm going to start my first little ocean painting. And to do this, I'm going to use a couple of different colors. I'll kind of show you guys which colors that I use throughout the video. But for this, I'm going to go in with my magenta, pink, a little bit of blue, and some white to do the sky. And I just wanted to kind of have a light lilac sky to start out with. And I wanted to make that lilac color a little bit lighter, so I added some white, and it kind of made this cool like texture to it since I didn't mix it in beforehand. And before I forget, I'm going to do all of the edging, because a lot of the time when I forget to do this, I can't recreate the same exact color that I used. And so I always try to remember to do the edging. This is definitely inspired by my little ocean painting that I did quite a while back. I know a lot of you guys loved that watercolor tutorial, so I wanted to do like a acrylic version. But yeah, before I move into the detailing of the ocean and the sky, I'm gonna just do some like faraway islands that are off in the distance. And I'm not going to be doing all of the detailing right now in terms of like shadowing and everything. I'm just going to do as much as I can because a lot of it you kind of want to wait for it to dry to add more detail. Otherwise, all of the colors just kind of blend into each other and it's like a muddy mess of colors. So I like to let each layer dry for a little bit. And that's when I'm going to be going in with the detailing of the ocean. And I'm just kind of using my flat brush, and I'm doing this like little squiggly technique. I don't know the right way to make little wave details, but that's just how I do it. And then I'm going to take a smaller brush and I'm going to go in and create my little clouds. And for some reason, clouds have always been something intimidating for me to paint. It's kind of hard to get that perfect texture that you think of when you think of clouds, but I try to do more like saturated color on the tops of the clouds and then fade it out on the bottom. And that's kind of just what I've done in the past, but I kind of want to let those dry for a little bit, so I'll do more detailing in the waves and then I'll go back to them later. And while I'm waiting for the clouds to dry, I'm going to go back into the waves and add some white detailing, which is my favorite part of doing ocean waves. I feel like a lot of the time it's the white paint that kind of brings out the detailing of the oceans and kind of makes it more realistic looking. So I'm just going to add a ton of white paint to it. And to be totally honest with you, I probably could have stopped this detailing process a long time ago, but I just have the too much gene a little bit when it comes to acrylic painting, and I just keep wanting to do more and more layers. I just truly don't know when to stop a lot of the time. And now I'm going to take out a flat bristle brush that is totally dry, and I'm going to barely dip it into some white paint just to get it on the ends of the bristles. And that's what I'll use to kind of create the effect of splashing water. And at this point, I'm pretty much done with the detailing. Now I kind of want to add some color in there. And a lot of the time with water and reflections, there's going to be a ton of different colors that are reflecting off of the water. So I'm just adding a little bit of pink, a little bit of purples, and just some like dots of those throughout the ocean. And for the sky, I wanted to do kind of like a dreamy setting. So I am obviously going to add some stars and a little moon, and I'm just going to create like a little nighttime moonlit ocean setting. And to make it a little more magical looking, I'm just going to go in with some very watered down white little dots everywhere. And before I forget, I'm going to do all of the detailing on the sides of the canvas. I know a lot of the time people won't probably see this part, but I just love the way it looks when it's kind of wrapped around the whole canvas. And after those little finishing touches, I'm all done with my little moonlit ocean painting. All right, so now I'm gonna move on to my next painting, and I just washed off all my brushes, got a new water bowl, and I'm also going to get out a new mini canvas. And this one I'm gonna do another ocean painting, but it's gonna be more of like a pink version. And I also wanna go in with some palette knives, and I've actually never used a palette knife before. But I grew up watching Bob Ross, and I know he always uses these palette knives, and so I kind of wanted to try it with these acrylic paints. And I kind of don't know how I feel about them, to be honest. I think they're really good for probably when you're doing oil paints and the paints aren't really mixing together as much. I will say though that the texture that you get from it is really like different. You get these like big clumps of texture, whereas if you're going in with a paintbrush, it kind of smooths down flat. So if you're looking to add more texture to your painting, then it's definitely a good way to do that. But for the clouds, I'm gonna go in with my paintbrush because it seemed way too intimidating to use a palette knife for that. And then I'm just doing a bunch of little stars, and I'm going to change kind of everything up in a second, if you'll see, because it was getting way too muddy. I was trying to get way too fancy with the gray shadowing, and it just looked not good at all. So I just decided to wipe the slate clean, and I'm just gonna go in with a very, very simple kind of like wash of white texture. And that's pretty much it. I'm not gonna go too crazy with anything else. So now I'm just kind of creating a horizon line, and that's all I'm gonna do for this ocean painting. All right, so we're done painting oceans. Now we're going to get into my meadow paintings. And for them, I'm going to basically copy exactly my old meadow paintings that I've done. I've only done two, and I loved painting both of them. So I kind of wanted to paint like a mini acrylic version of them. This specific one I did with gouache for a spread that I did for my bullet journal last March, and I had so much fun with it. So I definitely wanted to start out with this painting. And when I do meadow scenes, I always have like a very specific color palette in mind when I think of a meadow. I think of using a very light lilac sky, a lot of like light gray colors, and definitely a mossy kind of green color for the meadow. And to get that mossy green color, I like to take a bluish green color, a little bit of like a brown, and some gray and white. And to get all of these colors, I definitely think the gray and the white are the keys to all of these colors being a little more muted, which to me gives it that like mystical meadow vibe that I'm looking for. And I always try to make the foreground a little bit darker than the background, and so I'm just going in with a darker kind of version of that moss green color. And then since I'm doing acrylics, I want to add a lot of texture to it, so I'm just taking some white and some dark accents to kind of fill those out. Now, in my original painting, I did a little forest background, and it is kind of hard to get the detailing that I usually get with watercolors or gouache paints. So I'm just kind of trying to do my best with it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I know the acrylic painting is going to be a lot more messy and not as detailed as a normal painting would be. And then I'm just going to do a light tan color for a little path in the background. And the separation between the two grass sections is going to be a small little stream or river flowing through. So I'm just leaving that as white as I can so I don't get any like green colors mixed in there. But since it's acrylic, you can definitely like paint right on top of it, so it's not too big of a deal if you get any like splatters or anything else on it. I'm just trying to leave it as blank as I can. And then with a very, very fine brush, I'm going to go in and do some detailed trees and some sprigs of grass in the front. And then I'm going to take some of my white and tan and I'm going to do some white accents on the mountains so it looks a little bit more like there's a shadow on them. And I definitely let the first layer dry before going in and doing that just so it didn't all blend together. And I would say acrylic paints probably take like 20 minutes or so or 15 minutes to dry that first layer, and then you can go in with like a second layer. And now I'm just adding all of my little flowers to the meadow and taking a very, very light blue color for my little river running through it. And this scene that you see here is a recreation of one of my favorite places in Yosemite called Tuolumne Meadows. And they just have this like really pretty open meadow and there's always deer running through it. And it's just such a magical looking place. So I wanted to kind of have like a bunch of the white flowers floating up into the sky. So I just did a bunch of white dots for that and a little moon, and that is the completion of my little spring meadow painting. All right, so I saved my favorite painting that I wanted to paint for last because I knew I wanted to kind of have like a warm up to it, since this one's definitely a lot more detailed. And for this one, I'm going to take a light sky blue color. And I don't usually use such bright colors in paintings, so this is a little different for me, but I really, really like this color that I got out of it. To create it, I just did a tad of the lilac that I was using before, a super, super small amount of blue, and then a lot of white. And then I'm going to actually do my clouds first because I kind of wanted the paint to be still wet so that the clouds would look more kind of like washed out without having like any hard lines. And then I'm going to make two really big mountains in the front. And I'm just doing this with like a bluish green color. For detailing, I'm just doing a splash of white on each mountain, and I'm just gonna fan that out and it'll kind of look like snowy mountain tops. And if your mountains kind of blended in with the background like mine did, you can always add like a darker outline or shadowing so that it looks definitely more like pronounced and not like it's blending in with the sky. And after going back in and adding that white detailing, I'm going to take out a similar green that I used in my last one, but this one is just a little bit like brighter since I'm trying to make this painting a little bit more saturated in color and not as muted. And I'm just gonna do some like small shadowing on the grass. And for highlights and shadowing, I would definitely suggest taking a small amount of the original color that you used for the grass and adding either a gray or black in to make the shadow or a white to make a highlight. And that way you're not mixing in totally different colors that don't really go with the original color you put down. I've just found that this kind of helps the painting look more cohesive. And then just like the other painting I did, I'm gonna do some more little trees, and this time I'm gonna try to make them more detailed. So I'm going in with a finer brush, and then something happened with my brush because the handle like randomly fell off. So I'm just using the little tip to do the rest. And just a heads up, if you wanna keep your brushes from not doing this, I would suggest not leaving them in water because the wood expands and then the top pops off. So that's just a little tip that I need to take my own advice on because I do it all the time. But anyways, I'm just drawing my little trail in, and I'm gonna add all the flowers to my meadow. For the back flowers that I did, I just used the same technique that I used with the ocean, and I just grabbed like a tiny bit of white on a flat bristle brush that was dry, and that way you have like all these like scattered small flowers everywhere. But for the front ones, I, for the most part, want them to be larger and more saturated in color. So I'm kind of using like a mixture of both. And then I am going to detail my clouds now since the sky is dry, and I'm actually going to take like a light peach color. It's almost white, but I just added a little bit of peach in there to kind of make it stand out, like there's a little coloring in the clouds. And I actually really enjoyed these clouds the best out of, I think, all of the different clouds that I did because of that just small little detail that I added at the end with the coloring. And I really wanted to put another moon in this one because I just couldn't resist it. So I just painted a little moon and added some stars. And that is it for this little painting. I hope you guys enjoyed this painting tutorial, and I hope you guys are able to try it out yourselves. I'd love to see your guys' recreations. And I want to finish this off by saying a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I have been using them to create my new website. I've been intimidated to create my first website for a long time now, but Squarespace offers a all-in-one platform to host your own site, create your own shop, and it just makes it so easy to design everything the way you want it. So I'm just adding the final touches and adding all my listings in there, and I'm going to open my shop this month, which is very exciting. You can go to squarespace.com/jennyjournals to get a free trial and 10% off your first purchase. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will have these little mini canvas paintings that I did in this video listed in my shop if you want to check that out. And I'm going to also do one more little mini canvas painting tutorial on my Instagram, so if you want to follow me there, I'll have that up in a few days. But otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video.